In April 2010, two bright college students left their dorm for what should have been a typical Friday night out with friends, but they never returned. Years passed with no answers, no bodies, no closure, just an aching void where two vibrant young women used to be. Then 6 years later, someone noticed a shocking detail in a Google Street View image from their town, triggering a chain of disturbing revelations no one saw coming. The phone rang at 7:43 a.m., jolting Mark from a restless sleep. He fumbled for his cell on the nightstand, squinting at the unfamiliar number. "Hello, Mr. Thompson. This is Detective Rodriguez with Aurora County Police. I need you to come to the station immediately. We found something regarding your daughter's case." Mark's heart slammed against his ribs. 6 years. 6 years of sleepless nights of jumping every time the phone rang, of scanning crowds for a familiar face that never appeared. "What did you find? Is it Sarah? Is she Mr. Thompson? I'd prefer to discuss this in person. Can you come to the station? Just tell me if she's alive or dead." The words scraped his throat raw. "Sir, we discovered remains in the Aurora Alley sewer system, but I need you to understand." Rodriguez paused, and Mark could hear papers shuffling. "The remains we found belonged to May Chin, your daughter's roommate." Mark's legs gave out. He sank onto the edge of his bed, gripping the phone with white knuckles. May, not Sarah. The relief that flooded through him was immediately chased by crushing guilt. May was someone's daughter, too. How he managed. A citizen reported suspicious Google Street View footage from the area. They noticed a man at a car trunk with what appeared to be white material visible. When we investigated the location, we discovered the remains in the sewer system preserved in plastic wrapping. Mark's mind reeled. Google Street View. After 6 years, a random photo from a mapping car had broken the case open. "The man in the photo, do you know who he is? We're working on enhancing the image." The citizen who flagged it said something about the man's posture seemed off, like he was struggling with weight in the trunk. "We're checking when the Street View car passed through that area. Mr. Thompson, I need you to come in. We're reopening the entire case with new urgency, and we'll need to rein everyone from 2010. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Mark threw on yesterday's clothes, his hands shaking as he grabbed his keys. The 15-minute drive to the police station passed in a blur of red lights he barely noticed. His mind kept circling back to that Friday night 6 years ago, April 9th, 2010. The girls had gone to Chrome, the popular college club. Sarah had texted him at 10:47 p.m., out with May. "Don't wait up, Dad. Love you." It was the last message he ever received from her. The police station's fluorescent lights felt too bright as Mark walked through the entrance. Detective Rodriguez met him in the lobby. A woman in her 40s with serious eyes and prematurely gray streaks in her black hair. "Mr. Thompson, thank you for coming. Please follow me." She led him to a small conference room where evidence bags lay on the table. Mark's stomach churned when he saw a muddied student ID card in one of them. Even through the plastic and dirt, he recognized Machen's bright smile from the photo. This was found with the body, Rodriguez said gently. The preservation in plastic helped maintain certain evidence. "We're running DNA tests now." "Their dorm room," Mark said suddenly. "When we went there after they disappeared, everything was exactly as they'd left it. Sarah's economics textbook was still open on her desk. Chapter 12. I remember because she'd highlighted nearly every line. May's coffee mug was half full on her nightstand, still had lipstick marks on the rim. Rodriguez nodded, taking notes. Those details were in the original file. We photographed everything. 2 20-year-old women don't just vanish without taking anything. No clothes, no money from their accounts, no cell phone activity after that night. The Street View footage. Can I see it? Rodriguez pulled out a printed screenshot. The image was grainy, showing a man in dark clothing bent over an open car trunk. The angle only caught his back and side profile, but white plastic was clearly visible in the trunk's interior. The timestamp read, June 15th, 2010, just 2 months after the girls vanished. We're having tech enhance this, checking traffic cameras from the area, anything that might give us a clearer image or license plate. The fact that he was moving May's body suggests she stopped herself. Suggests Sarah might still be alive somewhere. Mark finished. That's what you're thinking? We can't jump to conclusions, but yes, it's a possibility we're exploring. A knock on the door interrupted them. An officer leaned in. Detective, the Chens are here. Mark's chest tightened. Through the conference room window, he saw May's parents in the waiting area. Mrs. Chen clutched her husband's arm, her face a mask of devastation. Mr. Chen stared at nothing, looking like he'd aged 20 years in a morning. Mark stood. Take your time, Rodriguez said. Mark walked to the waiting area on unsteady legs. When Mrs. Chen saw him, she let out a sound that was part sob, part wail. He opened his arms, and she collapsed against him, her small frame shaking with grief. My baby, she whispered in accented English. My baby girl. Mr. Chen joined the embrace, and the three parents stood there bound by shared loss. Mark held them while guilt ate at him from the inside. He was grateful, sickeningly, selfishly grateful, that it wasn't Sarah's body in that sewer, that he still had hope, while the Chens had only devastating certainty. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. Detective Rodriguez gave them time before gently separating them. We're going to find who did this, she promised the Chens. And Mr. Thompson, we're not giving up on finding Sarah. This discovery changes everything. Whoever took them made a mistake, and that Google footage is going to help us find him. Mark nodded. But as he looked at the Chens' shattered faces, he wondered if finding the truth would bring any real peace to any of them. Mark couldn't go home. Not yet. Instead, he found himself turning toward the university, drawn by an inexplicable need to retrace his daughter's last known steps. The campus looked exactly the same, yet entirely different. Exit Hall, Sarah's old dorm, still stood like a brick monument to his memories. Mark parked and walked through the main entrance, the familiar smell of industrial cleaner and microwave popcorn hitting him immediately. The same bulletin boards lined the walls, their cork surfaces peppered with colorful flyers. But instead of 2010's announcements for Spring Formal and Economic Study Group, he now saw Pride Week 2016 and Climate Action Committee. The carpet was the same, worn thin in the middle, from thousands of students' footsteps. The burgundy pattern faded but unmistakable. A group of girls rushed past him laughing about someone's Instagram story. They looked so young, so carefree, just like Sarah and May had been. Mark climbed to the third-floor room 312. He stood outside what had been their room, listening to the muffled sound of today's occupants. Music he didn't recognize, voices discussing a chemistry exam. These students had no idea that two girls had vanished from this very room, leaving behind lives interrupted mid-sentence. Leaving the dorm, Mark drove the familiar route to Chrome nightclub, or what used to be Chrome. The neon sign was gone, replaced by a sun-faded for lease banner. The windows were covered with brown paper edges, curling from age and weather. He parked and walked the perimeter, taking photos with his phone. The surrounding businesses told their own story of time's passage. The Subway shop was now a vegan cafe. The 24-hour copy center had become a phone repair store. But some things remained. Crossroads Bar still occupied the corner spot, its brick facade and green awning unchanged. Murphy's Pub, another student hangout from 2010, was boarded up. The Velvet Room, once notorious for its lax ID checks, had been converted into a yoga studio. Mark photographed each storefront, remembering how the police had methodically visited every establishment in 2010. Detective Morrison Rodriguez's predecessor had personally interviewed every employee, collected every piece of security footage. Crossroads Bar had been checked too, Mark recalled. The owner then had insisted no one saw the girls that night. His phone buzzed a text from an unknown number. Local news is setting up at Aurora Alley. Thought you should know a friend. Mark drove toward Aurora Alley, his chest tightening as he approached. Sure enough, 3 news vans had claimed spots along the street. Reporters were setting up cameras, angling for shots of the sewer grate where May had been found. By tonight, her face would be on every local channel. Maybe that was good. Maybe someone would remember something they'd forgotten or been too afraid to mention 6 years ago. At home, Mark opened his laptop and logged into Facebook. The Find Sarah and May page, which he'd created 2 weeks after their disappearance, showed 47 notifications. His hands trembled as he clicked through. The news had broken. May's discovery dominated the feed. Over 200 new comments had appeared since morning. Just heard about May. Praying Sarah comes home safe. I remember them from Psych 101. This is heartbreaking. Whoever did this is a monster. Hope they catch him. Old classmates were sharing the news story, adding their own memories. Sarah's freshman roommate posted a photo Mark had never seen. Sarah and May, laughing at some dorm party, red Solo cups in hands so young and alive, it made his chest ache. Then he saw the message notification. Pete Garrison, the name wasn't familiar. Mark clicked open the private message. Mr. Thompson, I saw the news about May Chen. I'm devastated. I own Crossroads Bar on University Avenue. I know police talked to us back in 2010, but I recently had a conversation with a former bartender who worked that night. He mentioned something about serving 2 Asian girls matching Sarah and May's description. He didn't think much of it at the time, but after seeing today's news, I felt I had to reach out. Would you be willing to meet? I'd prefer to discuss this with you before contacting police, as I want to be sure the information is accurate. I'm at the bar now, if you're available. Mark stared at the message. After 6 years of nothing, suddenly a witness emerges. His fingers hovered over the keyboard as he typed a reply. I can be there within the hour. Pete responded immediately. Thank you. I feel terrible this information come out sooner. The bartender only mentioned it recently during a casual phone call. We were catching up and somehow that night came up. I'll explain everything when you arrive. Mark leaned back uneasy, prickling his spine. Police had interviewed everyone at Crossroads in 2010. The owner then, was it the same person, had been adamant that no one saw the girls? Why would a bartender suddenly remember serving them 6 years later, and why contact him instead of going straight to police? Still, any lead was better than the nothing he'd lived with for 6 years. Mark grabbed his keys, hope and suspicion warring in his chest as he headed for the door. Crossroads Bar sat on the corner like it had for decades, its green awning faded but intact. Mark pushed through the heavy wooden door, his eyes adjusting to the dim interior. The place was empty, except for a man behind the bar, presumably Pete Garrison. Mr. Thompson. The man looked to be in his early 50s, stocky build with thinning hair and a practiced smile. I'm Pete. Thank you for coming so quickly. Mark approached the bar, taking in the typical college dive atmosphere, worn bar stools, sports memorabilia on the walls, the lingering smell of stale beer and fried food. Can I get you something beer coffee? Pete was already reaching for a pint glass. Just water, thanks. I want to hear about this bartender. Pete filled the pint glass with beer anyway, sliding it across the bar. You look like you need it. Hell of a day for you, I'm sure. As a father myself, I can't imagine what you're going through. He paused, leaning forward. The news said they found Mashin's body. Were you there when they discovered it? I mean, what kind of evidence was with the body? Mark frowned at the beer, but took a reflexive sip. The police didn't share many details. Of course, of course. Pete nodded rapidly. But they must have found something right, DNA evidence. The news mentioned something about Google Street View footage. Did they show you that? Why do you need to know about evidence? Mark set down the glass harder than intended. Pete raised his hands. Sorry, I'm just trying to understand the situation. Where exactly did they find her? The news just said Aurora Alley, but that's a long stretch. And the condition of the body, was it well preserved? I mean, after 6 years? Mark's unease deepened. Let's talk about your bartender, the one who remembers serving Sarah and May. Right? Yes. Pete wiped down the already clean bar. Tommy Chen, different Chen, no relation to your daughter's friend. Good kid. Worked here for about 3 years. We were catching up last week and somehow that night came up. Where is Tommy now? I'd like to speak with him directly. Pete's smile faltered. He moved out west. Colorado, I think Denver area. You think, well, it might have been Arizona, Phoenix, or Tucson. We lost touch after he moved. Mark stared at him. You just spoke to him last week, but you're not sure what state he lives in. It was a quick call. Look, I have his old employment record somewhere. Let me check the office. Pete gestured vaguely toward the back. Make yourself comfortable. I'll just be a minute. As Pete disappeared through a door behind the bar, Mark stood and surveyed the room more carefully. The layout was typical. Main bar area, a few booth tables, restrooms, down a hallway. But what caught his attention was a heavy door marked Storage Employees, only near the restroom corridor. Unlike the other doors, this one had an electronic keypad lock, its small red light glowing in the dim bar lighting. Mark walked closer, pretending to head for the restroom. The door was reinforced steel painted to match the walls, but clearly newer than the surrounding structure. Why would a bar storage area need that level of security? Beer kegs and liquor inventory hardly warranted an electronic lock. He shook his head. He was being paranoid. The news about May, the stress of the day, it was making him see sinister possibilities everywhere. Plenty of businesses had upgraded security systems. Found something. Pete's voice made Mark jump. The bar owner emerged with a piece of notebook paper. Tommy made notes about that night. He always was detail-oriented. Mark returned to the bar, accepting the handwritten page. His eyes widened as he read, April 9th, 2010. 2 Asian girls, early 20s. One wearing white skirt with pink top ordered vodka cranberry. Other in jeans and blue sweater ordered rum and coke. Mentioned coming from Chrome, left around 1:30 a.m. This is very specific for something he just remembered recently, Mark said slowly. Like I said, Tommy had a great memory. Pete's eyes kept flicking up toward the corner of the room. Mark followed his gaze to a security camera pointed at the entrance. These details, what they were wearing, what they ordered. Your bartender remembered all this from a casual conversation 6 years later. Pete shifted uncomfortably. Some people just have minds for that kind of thing. I should take this to Detective Rodriguez immediately. Mark folded the paper. Wait. Pete's hand shot out, not quite touching Mark, but hovering near his arm. I mean, shouldn't we verify everything first? Make sure the details are accurate. I might have more records in my files, at home employment schedules, maybe even old security footage backed up somewhere. Security footage from 2010. We upgraded systems a few years back, but I never threw out the old drives. Why don't you come back tomorrow? Give me time to dig through everything. We want to be sure before we involve the police, right? Mark studied Pete's face. Sweat beaded on the man's forehead despite the bar's cool temperature. His eagerness to delay police involvement set off every alarm in Mark's head. I appreciate your help, Mark said, carefully pocketing the note. "I'll think about it." Pete's smile looked forced. "Of course. Take your time. I just want to help however I can as a father myself. You mentioned that." Mark headed for the door. "I'll be in touch." As he left, he could feel Pete's eyes following him. In his car, Mark pulled out his phone and scrolled to Detective Rodriguez's number. Something was very wrong with Pete Garrison, and the detective needed to know. Mark pulled out of Crossroads Bar's parking lot, but only drove half a block before pulling over. His hands shook as he found Detective Rodriguez's number in his phone. "Rodriguez, Detective, it's Mark Thompson. I just met with Pete Garrison, the owner of Crossroads Bar. Something's very wrong." "Slow down, Mr. Thompson. Tell me what happened." Mark kept his eyes on the bar's entrance through his rearview mirror as he spoke. "He contacted me through Facebook, claimed a former bartender remembered serving the girls that night. But he was obsessed with what evidence you found. He kept asking about DNA, where exactly May's body was discovered, how well preserved it was." "Go on." "When I asked for the bartender's contact info, he couldn't keep his story straight. First, the guy was in Colorado, then Arizona, and he had this handwritten note with incredibly specific details about what the girls wore, what they drank, things nobody would remember from a casual phone conversation 6 years later. Where are you now?" "Parked down the street from the bar." "Detective, when I mentioned bringing the information to you, he panicked, insisted we needed to verify details first. He wants me to come back tomorrow. Stay where you are. Don't approach him again. We'll look into Pete Garrison immediately." "There's something else. The bar has this reinforced door with an electronic lock leading to what's supposedly just storage." It seemed like overkill for Mark, stopped mid-sentence. Pete had emerged from the bar's front entrance. Even from a distance, Mark could see the man's agitated movements. Pete looked up and down the street, his head swiving nervously, then hurried toward the alley that ran alongside the building. "He just came outside," Mark whispered, though there was no way Pete could hear him. "He's going into the alley. Mr. Thompson, do not follow him. I'm just going to drive by. I won't stop." Mark ended the call before Rodriguez could protest. He started his car and drove slowly past the alley mouth. Pete was at a service entrance near the back, fumbling with keys. He kept glancing over his shoulder, his movements jerky and desperate. Mark circled the block and passed by again. This time Pete was dragging something from the service door. Industrial cleaning supplies. Mark's stomach clenched as he identified them. A large jug of bleach, a box of heavy-duty garbage bags, and what looked like a commercial carpet cleaner, the kind used by professional cleaning services. Pete's frantic energy was unmistakable. He hefted the supplies toward a basement access door separate from the main service entrance. His shirt was soaked with sweat, and he kept pausing to scan the alley as if expecting someone to appear at any moment. Mark forced himself to keep driving. Every instinct screamed at him to stop to confront Pete to demand answers about Sarah. But Rodriguez was right. He needed to let the police handle this. He'd seen enough to know Pete was hiding something terrible. The drive home took 15 minutes, but felt like hours. Mark's mind raced with possibilities, each more horrifying than the last. Pete's questions about evidence, his desperation to delay police involvement, the industrial cleaning supplies. It all pointed to someone trying to destroy evidence. Mark pulled into his driveway and noticed immediately that something was wrong. His front door stood slightly open, a gap of maybe 2 in. He always locked it, had double-checked it that very morning before leaving for the police station. Heart hammering, Mark approached slowly. The door pushed open at his touch. Muddy footprints led from the entrance through his living room, distinct against the beige carpet. The prints headed straight for the hallway that led to the bedrooms. "Hello," Mark called out, though the house felt empty. He followed the footprints to Sarah's room, The door was open. Inside, everything appeared normal, except for one glaring absence. Sarah's missing person flyer, which had hung on the wall for 6 years, was gone. Torn fragments clung to the tape marks on the wall. Mark's legs went weak. Someone had been in his house. Someone had come specifically for Sarah's room for her poster. His phone buzzed with a text from Rodriguez. "Patrol car heading to Crossroads now. Where are you?" Mark typed with trembling fingers. "Home." Someone broke in. They took Sarah's missing poster. His phone rang immediately. Rodriguez's voice was tight with urgency. "Get out of the house now. Go to your car and lock the doors. Units are on the way." Mark backed out of Sarah's room, his eyes scanning for any movement, any sign he wasn't alone. The violated sanctuary of his home suddenly felt like a trap, and he knew with cold certainty that Pete Garrison was connected to all of this. Mark sat in his car outside his house, waiting for the police, when his phone buzzed. Unknown number. His finger hesitated over the screen before he opened the message. The photo hit him like a physical blow. Sarah's college ID card, the one she'd been so proud of freshman year. Her 18-year-old face beamed up at him, frozen in time. But it wasn't the ID that made his blood run cold. It was the black-gloved hand holding it against a concrete wall. The accompanying text read, "Come to Crossroads, bar basement, alone in 20 minutes, if you want answers about your daughter. No police or she disappears forever." Mark's vision blurred. Sarah, after 6 years of nothing of empty hope and crushing despair, someone was dangling proof of her existence like bait. His hands shook as he zoomed in on the photo. The ID looked real worn at the edges from use. The concrete wall behind it could be anywhere, but he knew. He knew it was Pete Garrison holding that card. This bastard had his daughter all along. His phone rang. "Detective Rodriguez." Mark stared at the screen, his thumb hovering over the answer button. If he told her about the text, she'd forbid him from going. Police would swarm the bar. And if Pete was watching somehow, if he had cameras, if he saw the police coming, she disappears forever. Mark declined the call and opened a new message to Rodriguez. He typed, "Pete Garrison has Sarah. He just sent proof. I'm going to Crossroads. Bar basement, basement." His thumb moved to send and then stopped. What if Pete had access to his phone somehow? What if sending this message meant Sarah's death? He deleted the unsent message. Every instinct screamed that he was walking into a trap, but Sarah might be alive. After 6 years, his little girl might be waiting in that basement, and he couldn't risk her life by doing the smart thing. Mark drove back toward Crossroads Bar, his mind racing through possibilities. 20 minutes. Pete had given him 20 minutes, which meant he was watching knew where Mark was. The break-in at his house. Pete must have done it while Mark was calling Rodriguez. He parked behind the building as instructed. The alley was darker now, the sun having set, while he'd waited for police at his house. A single bulb cast weak yellow light over a basement entrance he hadn't noticed before. Different from the service door Pete had used earlier, Mark got out of his car, legs unsteady. The alley was empty, eerily quiet. He approached the basement door, which stood slightly open. "Down here." Pete's voice drifted up from below. Mark descended narrow concrete stairs, the temperature dropping with each step. At the bottom, Pete waited with a pistol pointed at Mark's chest. The friendly bar owner facade was gone, replaced by someone Mark didn't recognize. Face, flushed eyes, wild sweat staining his shirt. "You couldn't leave it alone?" Pete said. 6 years of nothing, and then that damn Google car, and now you asking questions, calling cops. Where is she? Mark's voice came out raw. "Move." Pete gestured with the gun toward a doorway. The basement was nothing like Mark had imagined. Instead of a simple storage room, corridors branched off in multiple directions. They passed an industrial freezer unit, its motor humming. More doorways led to rooms Mark couldn't see into. The space seemed to extend far beyond the bar's footprint, possibly connecting to adjacent buildings. "You know they're already looking for me," Pete said as they walked. That detective called the bar, asked about employee records. "You ruined everything. 6 quiet years, and you had to ruin it." They stopped at a reinforced door with external locks, deadbolts, that could only be opened from the outside. Pete fumbled with keys while keeping the gun trained on Mark. "Is she here? Is Sarah here?" Pete's smile was cold. "You want to see what your meddling caused? What's going to end because of you?" The door swung open to reveal a small concrete room. Mark's legs nearly gave out at what he saw. A narrow bed with a thin mattress. Women's clothing folded on a makeshift shelf. A bucket in the corner. And on the wall, scratches in the concrete. Hundreds of them grouped in sets of 7. Calendar marks. Someone had been counting days in this underground prison. "Sarah." Mark lunged forward, but the room was empty. Pete shoved him inside. "She was here for a long time, but you've made things complicated." Mark spun around. "Where is she? What did you do to her?" "The same thing I'm going to do to you." Pete aimed the gun at Mark's head. "You're going to disappear just like your daughter. Only this time there won't be any Google car to accidentally catch me. Nobody turning up in a sewer." Mark stared at the scratches on the wall, trying to count them, trying to calculate how many days of Sarah's life they represented. The neat groups of 7 blurred together, weeks becoming months, becoming years in this concrete tomb. "Please," Mark said, his voice breaking. "Just tell me if she's alive." Pete's finger moved to the trigger. A sharp knocking echoed from above. 3 authoritative raps that made Pete freeze mid-motion. His eyes darted to the wall where Mark now noticed a bank of security monitors he'd missed in his terror. "Police, Mr. Garrison, we need to speak with you." Pete's face contorted with rage and panic. The monitors showed multiple angles. 2 uniformed officers at the bar's front entrance, the main barroom interior. The alley where Mark's car sat visible, even the street view. Pete had been watching everything. The screens cast an eerie blue glow in the dim basement, showing the officers' body cameras were active, their patrol car prominent in the frame. Pete grabbed Mark's collar, pressing the gun to his temple. Not one sound. "You make any noise, she dies. Understand, Sarah dies." Mark nodded, his heart hammering. "Sarah." Pete had just confirmed she was alive. "I'll be right there." Pete called up the stairs, his voice shifting to something artificially calm, the transformation chilling. He shoved Mark deeper into the room and pointed at the floor. "Sit. Don't move. If I hear anything, I'll kill her before they can stop me." Pete's footsteps thundered up the stairs. Mark strained to hear the conversation, above pressing his ear to the concrete ceiling. The distant sound of a door opening, then Pete's voice muffled but audible. "Officer, sorry we're closed. I was just down in the basement doing inventory. Mr. Garrison, we're looking for Mark Thompson. His car was seen in this area. Thompson, the father of that missing girl. Haven't seen him since earlier today. He left around 4:00. Seemed upset about something." Mark looked frantically around the room. He had to make noise, had to alert them. A metal shelving unit stood against one wall, loaded with boxes. Mark crawled to it and shoved with all his strength. The shelf toppled with a crash that seemed deafening to Mark, but barely echoed in the thick-walled space. The concrete absorbed sound like a tomb. He grabbed a metal box and banged it against the floor, against the walls, screaming, "Help, I'm down here." Nothing. The basement was too deep, the walls too thick. Pete's voice continued above, smooth and practiced. "You're welcome to look around if you want, but like I said, he's not here." "Is he in some kind of trouble?" "No, sir." Just want to make sure he's safe. You said he seemed upset. Yeah, asking about old employee records. Something about that poor girl they found. May tragic situation. He seemed really shaken up about it. Kept asking strange questions. To be honest, officers, I was a bit worried about his mental state. Mark pounded on the door until his fists bled, leaving smears on the metal. He screamed until his throat was raw. The conversation upstairs continued for several agonizing minutes. He could hear footsteps moving around. The officers were walking through the bar checking. His hopes soared, then crashed as he heard the worst sound imaginable, the front door closing. Pete's footsteps on the stairs were slow, deliberate. Each footfall echoed like a countdown. When he appeared in the doorway, his face was flushed with anger and something else. Fear. Sweat had soaked through his shirt and his hands trembled slightly. Your cop friends just signed your death warrant. Pete grabbed Mark's arm, dragging him from the room. Come on. Time to see the grand tour before you die. They moved deeper into the basement complex. Mark's horror grew with each room they passed. A stained mattress in one corner, chains bolted to walls with disturbing wear patterns suggesting frequent use. Video equipment, cameras on tripods, professional lighting rigs, monitors showing different angles of a concrete room. The setup made Mark's stomach heave. Quite the operation, right? Pete's voice was manic, now high-pitched and unstable. 6 years of careful work. Would have been 6 more if you hadn't. Is Sarah here? Mark's voice cracked. Is my daughter here? Please, I just need to know. Pete smiled coldly. You want to know what happened to your precious daughter? You want to know everything. They stopped at the industrial freezer Mark had noticed earlier. Pete yanked open the heavy door, revealing the empty interior. The smell of bleach was overwhelming. This is where I kept your daughter's friend. 2 years in here before I had to move her. Construction starting next door. Workers getting too close. Had to dump her quick. Pete laughed bitterly. And wouldn't you know it, Google Street View car drives by at exactly the wrong moment. All my careful planning ruined by a mapping car. Sarah, Mark pleaded, just tell me. You're going to end up exactly like May in this freezer, and no one will ever find you because I learned from my mistakes. Suddenly shouting erupted from above. Multiple voices, boots thundering on stairs. The monitors on the wall showed police vehicles surrounding the building, officers at every exit. Police Pete Garrison. We know Mark Thompson is here. Pete's face went white. He spun toward the monitors. Mark's car was surrounded by police vehicles. Officers in tactical gear were at every entrance. Rodriguez appeared on one screen, talking into her radio. Later, Mark would learn that Rodriguez had grown suspicious when he didn't answer his phone after their last conversation. When patrol units spotted his car in the alley and found his phone inside, they'd returned in force. Pete grabbed Mark, spinning him around as a human shield. The gun pressed against Mark's head as officers flooded into the basement, weapons drawn. The narrow corridors filled with shouts, flashlight beams cutting through the dim space. Back off, Pete screamed. I'll kill him. Detective Rodriguez led the team, her weapon trained on Pete. Behind her, at least 6 officers had their weapons drawn. It's over, Garrison. We've got the building surrounded. There's no way out. Then he dies with me. Think about it, Rodriguez said calmly, though Mark could see the tension in her shoulders. You shoot him, we shoot you. You die here in this basement. Is that what you want, or do you want to live? To have your story heard, you don't understand. Pete's voice was breaking now. You don't understand what I've built here. Help us understand. Put the gun down and tell us everything. Mark felt Pete's grip waver. The gun trembled against his temple. He could smell Pete's sweat, feel the man's rapid breathing. There's no good ending here for you if you pull that trigger, Rodriguez continued, taking a small step forward. But if you put the gun down, you live. You get a lawyer. You get to speak your piece. Maybe even cut a deal. A deal, Pete's voice held a spark of interest. Depends on what you tell us. But dead men can't make deals, Pete. You don't understand what he cost me. Pete's voice cracked. 6 years, 6 perfect years, and he ruined it. We can talk about that, but first, the gun. For a long moment, nobody moved. The basement was silent except for the hum of the freezer and Pete's ragged breathing. Mark could see officers positioned at every angle, red dots from laser sights dancing on the walls. Then Pete's grip loosened slightly, the gun dropping an inch. It was enough. In that split second of distraction, an officer from the side fired a taser. Pete convulsed, the gun clattering away as he collapsed. Officers swarmed him, securing the weapon and cuffing him as he writhed on the floor. "Bastards," Pete screamed. "You don't know what you've done. She'll die without me. She needs her medicine. She needs Mark." Rodriguez helped him up. "Are you hurt, Sarah?" Mark gasped, his legs barely supporting him. "He has Sarah. She's here somewhere." Rodriguez barked orders. "Search every room. Check every door. We're looking for Sarah Thompson, white female, 26 years old." Officers spread through the basement like a tide. Mark stumbled after them, his heart racing. They were methodical, checking each room, calling out clear as they moved. The basement seemed to go on forever, a maze of concrete and horror. "Locked door here," an officer shouted from down a corridor. "Heavy reinforcement, multiple external locks." They converged on the location. The door was steel with 3 dead bolts that could only be opened from outside. Scratch marks marred the interior side, as if someone had clawed at it. "Get the ram," Rodriguez ordered. 2 officers brought up a battering ram. It took 4 strikes before the door burst inward. The smell hit them first. Unwashed body, human waste, despair. "Oh my God," someone whispered. In the corner, on a filthy mattress, was a figure that made Mark's knees buckle. The woman was skeletal, her hair matted and long, wearing a stained nightgown that hung on her emaciated frame. She pressed herself against the wall, eyes unfocused and glassy, flinching violently as officers approached. "No, please," she whispered. "I'll be good. I'll be quiet." "Please don't." "Everyone back," Rodriguez commanded softly. "Give her space, Mark." Mark pushed past the officers, his vision blurring with tears. This couldn't be Sarah. This broken creature couldn't be his vibrant daughter. "Sarah, baby, it's Dad." She stared through him, no recognition in her vacant eyes. Her arms were covered in bruises, some fresh, some faded to yellow. Her cheekbones jutted sharply from her face. "Sonny," he tried desperately, using her childhood nickname, the one only family knew. "Sonny, it's Daddy. I'm here to take you home." Something flickered in her eyes. Her head tilted slightly like a bird hearing a distant call. "Daddy." The word was barely a whisper, uncertain, like she was testing a foreign language. But he said, "You stopped looking." He said, "The world." He lied, baby. I never stopped looking. Never. Sarah began to shake, then sob horrible broken sounds that didn't seem human. Mark gathered her skeletal frame in his arms as paramedics rushed in. She weighed nothing, her bones sharp through thin skin. "Is this real?" she kept asking. "Is this real?" he said. "I was dreaming when I saw the sun. It's real, Sonny. You're safe now. You're safe." The paramedics worked quickly but gently, starting an IV, checking vitals. Sarah flinched at every touch, apologizing constantly. "I'm sorry. I'll be good. Please don't tell him I was bad." "Pete's been arrested," Rodriguez told her firmly. "He's in handcuffs. He can never hurt you again." As they prepared to move Sarah to a gurney, she gripped Mark's hand with surprising strength. There were others, she whispered before me. He showed me videos, said I'd end up like them if I wasn't good. Rodriguez's expression darkened. She stepped away to speak into her radio ordering teams to tear the basement apart to check every wall for hidden rooms. As the paramedics carried Sarah up the stairs, she saw sunlight through the bar windows and started crying again. The sun, she whispered. I thought I'd never. He said it was gone. Said there was war, nuclear winter. Just lies, Mark said, walking beside the gurney. All lies. Outside the alley was filled with emergency vehicles. News vans were already arriving, kept back by police tape. Pete was in the back of a patrol car, and as they passed, Sarah saw him and went rigid with terror. No, please. I was good. I didn't tell them anything. He can't hurt you. Mark said firmly, blocking her view. Look at me, Sonny. Just look at me. As the ambulance doors closed, Mark caught a glimpse of Pete in the patrol car. The man who'd held his daughter captive for 6 years looked small, pathetic, his face twisted with rage at his perfect world crumbling. The ambulance pulled away, carrying Sarah toward her first taste of freedom in 6 years. Toward a long road of healing that would begin with the simple act of seeing the sun and knowing it was real. The hospital's fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Mark sat beside Sarah's bed watching nurses check her IV lines. She'd been sedated for the examination, her skeletal frame barely making a shape under the white blankets. Every few minutes, even in drugged sleep, she would flinch or whimper. Detective Rodriguez appeared in the doorway, her expression grim. Mark, can we talk? The doctor said she'll be out for a while. Mark reluctantly followed her to a small consultation room down the hall. Rodriguez closed the door and sat across from him, opening a manila folder. Pete Garrison has confessed, she said without preamble. Our interrogation team worked on him for hours. He finally broke when we offered to recommend consideration for a lighter sentence if he told us everything about both girls. Mark's hands clenched. What did he say? Rodriguez consulted her notes. He admitted to targeting intoxicated college girls at his bar. It was a pattern going back years. On April 9, 2010, he spotted Sarah leaving Chrome nightclub alone. She was highly intoxicated, stumbling. He approached her outside, told her that her friend was sick in the parking lot and needed help. She would have gone, Mark said quietly. She would have wanted to help May. When they got to his van, May appeared. She'd apparently been looking for Sarah. May immediately recognized something was wrong. She told Pete that Sarah was too drunk, that she needed to come with her. She tried to pull Sarah away. Rodriguez paused, her jaw tightening. That's when Pete pulled a gun. He forced both girls into his van. May fought back, tried to protect Sarah. In the struggle, Pete shot her. He says it wasn't planned, but he murdered her. Mark's voice was flat. Yes. He kept May's body in the bar's walk-in freezer for 2 years. Can you imagine serving customers living his normal life with a murdered girl in his freezer? He only moved her when construction started on the adjacent building. He was afraid workers might need access to shared utility lines. The Google car. Pure coincidence. The Street View vehicle happened to drive by during the exact few minutes he was transferring May's body to his car to dump in the sewer system. He thought he'd waited long enough. Thought the heat had died down. One photograph undid 6 years of careful planning. Mark felt sick, and Sarah all this time. Rodriguez's expression darkened further. This is where it gets worse. Pete had been filming Sarah's abuse. He's been distributing sexual exploitation videos on the dark web for 6 years. He had a whole setup, cameras, lighting equipment. He made money off your daughter's suffering. Mark bolted for a wastebasket. Dry heaving. Rodriguez waited until he composed himself. There's more, she said gently. Pete admitted he's done this before. We found evidence of at least 3 other victims from before 2010. Women who were never reported missing, likely sex workers or homeless women, people he thought wouldn't be searched for. How many others are in that basement? We're still searching. He had multiple properties. Sarah was moved between locations, kept in specially constructed rooms. The basement prison you saw was just one site. He drugged her regularly to keep her compliant. We're still identifying all the substances. Mark thought of Sarah's vacant eyes, her skeletal frame. Why contact me? Why risk exposure, panic? When May's body was discovered, when he saw the news coverage, he knew we'd eventually connect it to him. He thought he could control the investigation by feeding you false information, by seeming helpful. He'd evaded serious charges before through manipulation and lies. He thought he could do it again. A soft knock interrupted them. Dr. Patel entered, a tablet in her hands. "Mr. Thompson, we've completed Sarah's initial examination." Mark steeled himself. "How bad is it physically?" "She's malnourished and has multiple vitamin deficiencies. We found high levels of benzodiazepines, antipsychotics, and other sedatives in her system. She's been kept in a chemical fog for years. The good news is that with proper nutrition and medical care, her body can recover, and psychologically, Dr. Patel's face was sympathetic, but honest. She's been severely traumatized and psychologically manipulated. She shows signs of extreme conditioning. She asked permission to use the bathroom, to eat, even to speak. She flinches at any unexpected movement or sound. When we tried to examine her, she kept saying she'd be good, that she was sorry." Mark's eyes burned with tears. "Does she remember anything about before? Her memories are fragmented." "Mr. Thompson, you need to understand." Pete told her repeatedly that her family had abandoned her, that no one was looking for her. He even told her the world had ended, that there was nuclear war, anything to keep her from trying to escape. She's been living in an alternate reality for 6 years, but she recognized me when I called her Sonny. That's a positive sign. Deeply embedded memories, especially those tied to emotion, can survive even severe trauma. But her recovery will be long and difficult. She'll need intensive therapy, possibly for years. They returned to Sarah's room, where she was beginning to stir. Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused from the sedation. When she saw Mark, she tensed. "It's okay, Sonny," he said softly. "You're safe. You're in a hospital." Sarah's eyes darted around the room, taking in the medical equipment, the windows showing daylight, the clean sheets. Her voice, when it came, was a broken whisper. "This is real. This is real. You're free." Detective Rodriguez stepped forward carefully. "Sarah, I'm Detective Rodriguez. We arrested Pete Garrison. He can't hurt you anymore. He's going to prison for the rest of his life." Sarah stared at her, then at Mark. Slowly, tentatively, she reached out her hand. Mark took it gently, feeling how thin her fingers were, how fragile. "Did you?" Sarah struggled with words. "Did you look for me?" "Every single day," Mark said, his voice breaking. "I never stopped looking. I never stopped hoping." Tears rolled down Sarah's sunken cheeks. He said you didn't want me anymore." "He lied, baby. He lied about everything." Rodriguez's phone buzzed. She stepped away to answer, then returned. "Mark, we've contacted the Chens. We're sending officers to inform them that their daughter's killer has been caught. They wanted you to know they're grateful Sarah survived." "What happens now?" Mark asked. "We continue investigating the sophisticated setup, the dark web distribution. Pete wasn't working entirely alone. We're tracking his connections, searching his properties. There might be other victims out there, other families who need answers." Mark looked at his daughter, 26 years old now, but broken in ways that made her seem both ancient and childlike. 6 years of her life stolen. 6 years of torture that no amount of justice could undo. Sarah squeezed his hand weakly. "Dad will. I get better," Dr. Patel answered gently. "With time, treatment, and support, you can heal. It won't be easy, but you're strong. You survived something unimaginable. We'll do it together," Mark promised. "Whatever it takes, however long it takes. You're not alone anymore." Sarah managed the faintest smile, barely there, but real. In that sterile hospital room, surrounded by the beeping of machines and the weight of unimaginable trauma, it was enough. She was alive. She was free. The monster who had stolen her life was in custody. His victims finally counted, their suffering finally acknowledged. Mark sat in that hospital room looking at Sarah, so different and older, now his heart breaking at how thin she was, how her eyes darted constantly to the door, as if expecting Pete to appear. He felt rage at the monster who had done this, overwhelming gratitude that she was finally free, and desperate hope that someday, somehow, his daughter would be able to heal from this nightmare.